by popular demand, I've invited Merey to come on, and we're going to start doing a maybe 20-minute, half-hour show each week where we're just going to discuss the things around mental illness. So, all right, so our last episode or the current series is Mental Illness 101. Yep. So I thought we'd just start with that today. So when you first found out that I had a mental illness, it was fairly obvious, wasn't it? I mean, there was no hiding that something was wrong with me.
That is true. There was nothing hiding that there was something wrong with you. But I think that we need to take a little bit of a step back because a lot of things can happen with a person who appears to suddenly get mental health issues.
Yep.
And there is a difference from having, let's say, instances of depression to someone who then shows that they have significant issues going on. And that's sort of where we found ourselves, where you may have had these bouts of depression, but then it seemed to escalate into something a lot more than that, where you seemed a lot more disconnected, a lot more angry.
That's right, because I do forget about the 6 months in the lead up because I got hurt in the unit, but the 6 months before that had been extremely stressful. I'd been under investigation for a spurious
that's right.
Claim of violence against a client that was just bizarre. So my downward spiral, I mean, I guess it started from there, didn't it? And then
it does, but then it just grows and becomes a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And you, from an outsider's perspective, it would be having your partner or having that person in your life with you who seem to be communicating. Sure, they're going through a rough time, but they're communicating with you, to then a person who is obviously struggling, unable to communicate, unable to vocalize what's going on with them, probably because you didn't even know.
No, I had no idea
what was going on with you.
Yeah. So when I had the knife attack incident and I called you, where did I call you from? The police station?
No, you called me from the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just said, I'm going to the police station. I need you to pick me up or something.
Do you know, that was a long time ago. I often make claim that I can't remember anything from 10 minutes ago, but I do think that you actually did run me through a little bit of what had happened. And
yeah, because I can't remember anything of that. I can barely remember who I called and why.
It is a significant amount of time ago. Love.
Yeah.
So, and a lot has happened since then, of course, for both of us.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, so there was that lead up where there was that. Do you think if I had have left the disability world before I had that critical incident, do you think my mental illness would have got as bad?
That's hard to say, but I think probably not.
Yeah.
I still think that you would have struggled with feeling depressed.
Yeah.
And that would still come and go as it had been. What's interesting to note is we didn't even know or recognise that Mark had been depressed regularly without going through this process either. So that is true.
Yeah. Because I read something the other day that I wrote while I was suspended before I got hurt. And I talked about having a panic attack. So I was starting to show probably signs of burnout, maybe?
Probably. It's such a tough call because I think we're talking about a little bit of a condition with your mental health that was triggered by an incident, and also some mental health conditions that you inherently had as well.
Yeah.
So there is a difference between the two.
Yeah, because we have found out, haven't we, that my family has a fairly significant history of mental illness.
This is true.
And we're very strong personalities, I think. I come from a family of very, very strong personalities whereas you come from a home that doesn't confront.
So not strong
anything.
personalities is what he's saying.
No, but yours have got strong personalities, but they don't confront anything.
No.
If
But-
there's an issue, you deal with it by ignoring it until everybody's happy again.
True. But we don't have our mentals.
No, but
We don't have our mentals.
But you got everything else.
I'm the sane one here. It's me. Is this one sitting here?
But physically your family's fallen apart, so I'm taking that as a positive.
Gosh.
See, my family lives to be 100, but we all die crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas your family kind of suffers.
Let's just air that dirty laundry out.
So, all right. So, do you say, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, do you say that I came home one day a different person? This is after the assault.
I would say yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely a different person. And I'm sure that there's lots of people who can relate to that in seeing a person who was able to communicate. Or actually, maybe it's more of a gradual thing for a lot of people as well. But in your circumstance, it was a lot more brutal, I would say, as a carer watching you. We had a really young child at the time. She was only about 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that you first started to really suffer, I'd actually just fallen pregnant with our second.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you remember what I looked like when I came home that day? Because I think I remember you picking me up from the police station.
I actually think you drove home. I believe you drove home.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I had to escort the client that attacked me into his cell, and I was taken in the police car with him because they didn't want him to get upset again. When you think about that, here I am caring for my assailant.
But at the time, that wasn't out of the realm of possibility to you either, because you were working and these are the people who you're working with. So to be there for them still wasn't a stretch for you either.
Well,
sure, in retrospect, yeah.
Yeah, it was probably just my natural thing. It is interesting that I cared more for my attacker than I cared for myself until I realised that I was busted, broken.
But I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people place priority on everyone else but themselves. That's quite normal. We all do it. But with mental health, you just can't do that. There has to be an emphasis on yourself.
Yeah. So, okay. So a lot of people won't have had the experience of a sudden onset. So let's delve into where did we go from when I got home? But I believe I was absolutely in pieces. I don't think either of us can remember exactly.
Not exactly, but what remains with me is the confusion around why you were the way you were.
Who was confused? You?
I
or
was
me?
confused.
Yeah.
Why you were behaving the way that you were. Why were you so angry? Not understanding what was going on, or that this was actually a natural progression for when you're suffering.
Yeah.
Well, neither of us understood that, but for me, I felt really, really lost, really lost, and not knowing what to do. And I remember I actually reached out to an old friend. I hadn't spoken to them in a while, but I reached out to them because I just felt desperate.
Yeah.
I felt desperate. Unfortunately, in trying to tell them what was going on and asking for their advice because I didn't know what to do, it didn't actually pan out. Little did I know they were going through their own drama at the time, but
Who was that? Can you say their name like quietly so I know who it was?
Sally.
Oh, okay.
Just an old friend.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not to put them down, because we're all in this world of not understanding.
Her world was melting down at the time and we had no idea.
Yeah, and we had no idea. You don't know these things. You don't know what other people are going through or what their world is like.
Okay, now I can't remember. Were you there when my doctor, Dr. Mark, told me that I had PTSD? Were you in the room for that?
Do you know, I can't actually remember it, but I know that we started off with a GP appointment, and that sort of started the ball rolling for you to start getting more help.
Yeah.
And then you then got the referral to see a psychologist from there.
All right.
Yeah.
But did you notice, can you remember, was there a difference between me on the days before that appointment to then finding out that I had a diagnosis, to understand that, yes, there was a name for what was wrong with me? Do you recall
No,
that?
and I wouldn't have actually, looking back at it now, I wouldn't have expected for you to have that penny drop moment going, oh my gosh, there is something wrong with me, because that was right at the beginning of when you were really, really suffering, and you would have been in your own head. And even though the doctor would have said that to you, I don't really believe that it would have made that much of an impact, because all there would have been at the time would have been your suffering, and that's it. So I think from a carer's perspective, that's important to understand that this is going on, this is potentially what it is, you need to go on to medication, and you need to start going to see a psychologist.
Yeah. So I come home, I'm a different person. Obviously, our kids have been affected by it. They can't not have been. In those first few days, you mentioned reaching out to a friend. Did you do anything else that you can remember at the time?
No, I didn't. I think I just left you to your own space.
More like you couldn't understand what was going on.
I couldn't understand what was going on at all, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even pretend that I understood. I didn't. And I think to a lot of people watching a person with mental health issues, it really does look like the person's being mean and selfish.
Right.
It does.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it looks.
How were you able to get past that? I mean, here I am, all of a sudden I'm being super mean and self-absorbed. Why did you stick around? Do you know?
Such a hard question. You know, I have thought about these things a lot.
Because we were away from your family. We'd moved up to Sydney. We were by ourselves. So it's not like you could just say, I'm taking the kids and we're going to mum and dad's place.
But, you know, honestly, for me as a person, when I'm going through something, I want to be alone. I don't want to be around people trying to explain things. I know that I probably tried to reach out to your parents a few times.
Yeah.
During then, but I wouldn't say that I engaged a lot with people.
Yeah.
I think I was more a little bit shut down myself, because what do you say?
Yeah.
There is no information there. Gradually over time, of course, I did, but in that moment, no, there was nothing. So I knew that you were going through something, and I actually just gave you a really wide berth.
Yeah.
A huge one, where myself and our daughter at the time, our daughter Michaela, we would spend a lot of time outside gardening and doing things together.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, see, I have no frame of reference. I have no memory of how this was impacting you at the time. I understand now because
Yes.
you've been able to explain it to me, but at the time. So if you could go back and talk to your old self, if your best friend called you today and said, my husband was attacked, he's come home, he's a different person, what would your advice be today? What would you say? What would you do?
Well, it's very easy now to give some advice. I would highly recommend that they make a GP or a doctor's appointment for their loved one or their friend. I do highly suggest you go with them to that appointment because it's more than likely they will not remember. Plus, they may be not able to communicate properly to their doctor about what's going on and will need you to do that for them. From there, I suggest that they look at potentially going on medication if that's the doctor sees that's necessary.
Yeah, but for the person, the carer, not for the patient, because we know what the patient needs. We understand that. But for the carer, what would you say to yourself? Like, click your fingers, you're in the room with Merey back in 2006. What are you going to say to her on that day? What are you going to tell her?
I would tell her that you can't fix them.
Yep.
There is nothing that you can do to fix the problem. You can't solve the fact that they're sad. You can't solve the fact that they're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do is just let them know that you love them and that you support them no matter what. And then give them the space to work on it. And because life is going on and you just go about life, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Straight off. And to look after yourself in those moments. Don't go with them into the sadness. Don't go with them into being angry. Let them have their behaviour and own that. And you just be there to love and support them.
Mm.
Does that not sit well with you?
No.
It looks like it doesn't.
No. That's actually really good. You do this all the time. You mention stuff and I just go, holy crap, the depth of wisdom that you have. The other side of that is you can't say something like that without me feeling guilty.
Oh, okay. I understand.
It's not because of what you said. It's just looking back on my own behaviour. Because you know how I've reacted to other situations of domestic abuse. When we've seen neighbours or friends or whatever, and it looks like there's a domestic abuse situation, you know that I've always stepped in. I can't not step in.
I know.
So I look back on my own behaviour and I go, if it's so unacceptable for me to see somebody doing that to somebody else, why would I engage in that behaviour? But as you said, I was so consumed with my own pain, for want of a better word, I couldn't even see what I was doing to you.
Well, that's right. You would not have been aware of what you were doing at all.
Yeah.
And possibly wouldn't even remember things that you would say.
Yeah. Because that was another big thing that you said, and I want to delve into this a little bit more, because you said that I would not remember appointments. So I'd go into a doctor's appointment and I wouldn't remember. So how much were you involved in my appointments in the beginning?
I was always involved.
Yeah?
Yes.
Was that your insistence or was that my insistence?
I actually don't think it was anyone's insistence. I think that is what I thought needed to be done.
Yeah.
Because I think if you have someone in your life who is not okay and they're not well, then why wouldn't you be there to get the information so that you can also understand in that moment what you need to do?
Yeah.
or how can you help? Because that's always what a carer is thinking. How can I make it better? What can I do? What's the one thing I can do that will give them a smile? Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not real. That's not going to happen. But that's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So if you go into these doctor's appointments, the psychologist appointments, you're getting all that information. Plus, you can relay information back to the person who's suffering the mental health condition.
I do remember that. I remember times where you would say, hey, remember when you said this in the psychiatrist's office? And I'd go, no, I don't. I've never said those words.
Or you would say to me, oh, but the psychologist said this. And I would say, no, they didn't. They didn't say that at all. They said blah, blah, blah.
So a lot of it was my perception was so obscured that it's like I was driving in fog, in heavy, heavy fog. I was aware, I was there, but I wasn't taking anything in. I wasn't able to see anything except for the fog in front of me.
At times, I actually more find you might take information in, but it's skewed. It's not actually what someone would say.
Sure.
So someone would say blah, blah, blah to you, and you hear something completely different. And it's not actually what they're saying. Or they say something to you and you can often say they're saying that agitated, or they're mad, or they're saying it this way with this emotion behind it. And I'll then often say, actually, no, they're not. They're just saying this.
So I'd say, oh, this person was really mad at me and they said this horrible thing.
Yes, or you think that this is how the situation is.
Did I ever resist you coming into the appointments? Was I ever like, don't come into this appointment?
No.
No?
No. I always found that you accepted the help. I think the harder part was when we were just trying to live life at home.
Yeah.
That was the hardest section.
Yeah.
And the appointments were always extremely, extremely hard for you.
Yeah?
Really hard.
I remember being exhausted after most of them, like I'd run an emotional marathon.
Yes. And that's the other side of it. You go into the appointments not wanting to talk, so you don't want to talk. You don't want to talk about your feelings. You don't want to relive circumstances or how you reacted to something through the week, but you have to.
Yeah.
You have to do that, and you have to think about it because it's vital to you getting better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's funny because there's a lot of shame about that time in me. I mean, there's shame around everything. Shame around, I was working full time at the time. We were equal partners in the marriage. I was proactive in caring for our daughter. And then all that seemed to go away in this blinding flash of pain and anguish that I was thrown into. So, all right. Well, thank you for chatting to me. I appreciate it.
I think we had fun.
So we're going to try and make this a thing. It's been suggested to us that people want to hear more from you, which is fair enough. You're much better looking than me.
See both of us.
See both of us. Drop us a comment in the things. Subscribe, like, and share to Shattered the Podcast, and we'll chat again next week.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
Can't wait.
Thank you, darling.
Love you.